ChessDiagnostic.
Hello everybody and welcome to ChessDiagnostic. So today in this video I'm going to cover a perfect game that I played on Lee Chess, as well as my other two World Open losses. So just kind of balancing it out. Now every once in a while I'll play a blitz game that I'll analyze and it'll be shown that I played every move perfectly. And in this game, against a pretty high-rated blitz opponent, I was able to win from this, let's see, it's like the Bogo Indian defense. It was one of these thematic tournaments. So I don't really know too much about the Bogo Indian, but the strategy is quite simple, where you're just playing in the center, and white can normally go for a kingside attack. And that's exactly what happened in this game. So black is checking my king, and I can interpose with the knight or the bishop. I chose the bishop, and he plays this move where if I take, then this pawn will kind of be a thorn in my side. So I just chase and make him make a decision. Of course, the knight could come in, gaining a tempo, but he plays a little slowly and passively. There's really no point to this move. So black plays a little weak in the opening, and I'm just trying to gain space in the center. Now I can chase his knight back. And the computer's rating it as roughly equal still at this point. I win a pawn, he gets his pawn back. Now he has the d4 pawn in the center. And this is where studying my losses and reinforcing my knowledge, the understanding of activity, where it really benefits, and I really need to spend more time playing or training longer games, studying master games, because when I do that, I always end up stronger than if I'm just playing blitz or a lot of my own games. So in this game, black has some trouble to develop his queenside pieces, and he just about accomplishes those tasks, but I ended up, well, playing f4, protecting that pawn, and now he's trying to solve his main strategic problem, which is these queenside pieces. I castle, the bishop's coming in on that diagonal, and now I'm preparing a kingside attack. So as I said, the main strategic idea for white here is to just start a kingside attack, and black will normally play on the queenside and in the center. And after the knight moves, I have actually quite an interesting sacrificial combination. Of course, you can see it starts with knight to f6. Now, the computer recommends that the queen take, I take, and then the bishop can take here, and actually I'll have an advantage. But he decides to take with the pawn and forces me to prove my sacrifice. Now, you don't want to just check with the rook, you actually have to sacrifice two pieces. So he's trying to stay in the game, and if you want to find the final move that leads to a quick win, notice that all these queenside pieces aren't really doing anything. Of course, the knight and the bishop, if just given one or two moves, will equalize and probably win, because his pass pawn on the d file, as well as my weaknesses here, are pretty great. So the move is f5, pretty much cutting off all of these pawns from interposing, and the rook, the queen, and the bishop. So if he takes here, not sure why it's not letting me. Oh, I guess I have to go to the analysis board here. Alright, so let me readjust this. So yeah, I was analyzing this, and it's rare that I see, you could see the evaluation was pretty much all in my favor. That's pretty rare. It's saying 0 for all the analysis, and he resigned actually at this point after f5, or timeout it sees here. He just kind of like an asshole just waited. But let's see. So if the king takes, then rook to h3, and then queen comes in, and there's no way he can stop this checkmate. Now the computer gives a somewhat ridiculous line of moving here and then queen to h6, just pretty much giving up all of these pieces. Queen to e4, queen to h3, queen to g2, and now there's nothing that black can do to prevent this checkmate. So that was pretty satisfying to play this game. Now I'm going to look at the other games, and this first one, I'm going to have to go back here. So unfortunately I couldn't remember all these moves, but it starts with e4, I'm white, e6, knight to f3. So we're playing just a standard French defense, and unfortunately he goes into a line where he tries to keep it closed for as long as possible, and I absolutely hate these positions. He didn't really have an advantage until later in the game. We're just developing pieces. I'm trying to keep that bishop, although I could have just let him trade it. That would have been the best option. So we both play slightly inaccurately, and it's equal at this point. Now the problem with my position is that I don't really have any plan long term. I can start an attack on the king side, but this knight here is kind of a pain in the ass, and this pawn can become weak pretty quickly. So it's saying that black has a slight advantage here, and I'm trying to start a kingside attack, but with g6 there's really no way to make progress other than to move the bishops out of the way and try to push the pawns forward, which is what I try to do. Now the problem with that is that this weakens white's kingside greatly, and with the bishops here and black's strong center, I start to have some trouble. Now of course I'm threatening f5, but this pawn, as I said, is weak, so I have to defend it. And now black's pieces start to become active. Of course he's not winning yet, but with that knight on e3 it just became uncomfortable, and again time trouble. So we just kept playing, trying to maintain the balance, and now with queen to b7 it's evaluating pretty much a winning advantage. But it ebbed and flowed in this game, and at this point I stopped notating because I had under 5 minutes. I think I was notating even up to 2 minutes or so, although USCF regulations say that you can stop at 5, so I should have stopped notating earlier. And now I couldn't really remember the moves from this point on. I think we just kept playing, and it ended up where he was pushing his pawn, and he got pressure on this weak pawn, and I didn't defend it correctly. So at this point he played here and won this pawn, and he did blunder, but I blundered back, and at this point it's just a lost position. So just analyzing from the opening, there's a lot of ways I could have prevented me from getting here. I could have kept the knight. Of course moving it forward was correct, but it would have been a lot better to keep this knight here, as well as bringing this bishop back, instead of trying to go for f5, which doesn't really lead to anything. Just my plan was wrong, because now this knight's getting in here and I just have a lot of practical problems. So my main lesson from this game is I really need to improve my opening knowledge in the closed French. I play this line a lot, but normally I'll get an open position. I'm very comfortable there, but if the opponent decides to go in the opposite direction, keeping things closed and just waiting it out, then I've lost quite a few games in blitz and over the board with these games. Alright, so the next game is a game that I'm very frustrated by. So the last game, I was definitely outplayed. I could have made better moves. And the opponent that I played, I think he was almost 2200 at one point, so he was playing quite strong, and he had an overall good tournament. But this opponent I really should have beat. Even though we were at the same, I think he won about 4 or 5 games, but I was totally winning in this game, and I just let it slip through my hands. So I'm white, and he played an opening line that I'm very comfortable with, and actually I made a video earlier analyzing this opening, and he just plays it totally incorrectly, giving me a pawn for no reason. But the trade-off, and it's actually not such a bad idea, is that he does get piece activity. But as you can see, the computer's evaluating it as 0. And I play somewhat passively, but at this point, I'm okay. And actually have a slight advantage. Now, Black's king is just sitting in the center, but it's overall safe. And I should have, well, after a3 and the rook comes in, I should have just played bishop to d4, getting that bishop active and just 2 moves away from completing total development with the queen moving and then this bishop coming out. So I blunder with knight to d4, and actually he could have sacked here. And I saw the sack, but I thought I'd be okay after he takes here, but actually there's some problems. Alright, so if the rook takes, then actually this knight coming in can pose to be quite a problem. Because if I take here, now the rook's coming in, and it's messy. Alright, so I blundered there, he blundered back, blunders again, and at this point I feel that I'm okay, but he plays an inaccurate combination, taking here. I just take, and now he's weakened my queen side, but I'm up a piece. So it's saying that it's equal, but after some more moves, I had a winning advantage. So he brings his bishop in, and I almost immediately just played the bishop to d4, but of course, overthinking it, I thought that if I took this pawn and allowed him to check, that he would have lots of problems, namely if he took back with the pawn, other than threatening here, that I would have this queen to e2 check, but of course the pawn covers this square, and he could interpose with it. So that's what I missed, and I was in time trouble again, even in this long game. Now normally I'm not in time trouble. I don't know why I was overthinking moves. I spent way too much time in the opening just overthinking moves and checking and rechecking. So mainly it's my clarity of thought process. So after the pawn takes, I just completely imploded after these moves. And now I miss that the queen's covering this rook, and of course he's threatening here. And I played another blunder. And at this point, I just resigned because there's really no stopping all of the threats. And I think I had about 8 seconds left to his hour. So this game was very frustrating for me, because if I would have just simply played bishop to e4 or to d4, even if this pawn comes in, I can pin it while hitting this rook. And after c takes d, he has a lot of problems. This would be very easy to win. But just based on that move, I didn't, and there was a lot of blunders in this game. So overall, these losses were very frustrating because a lot of close calls, and the only game that I felt I was clearly outplayed was the game that I just showed, the last game with the French defense. And other than my tactical oversight in the other game where I would have dropped a rook or been mated, I feel that my overall playing strength is pretty good. I'm not making too many egregious blunders, and I'm overall outplaying the opponent. I just need to consolidate and improve my opening repertoire and be a little more tactically sharp in order to do well in a tournament like the World Open. And that's what I'm planning to do next year. Alright, so I'm planning to make a video either today or tomorrow, or the next day after, for the World Open, the wins, and those were very complicated games as well. Some blunders in those games that I really shouldn't have done, but you'll see. Alright, thanks for watching, and leave a like or a comment if you enjoyed any of these analysis of my games, and I'll see you in the future.